from Mexico City. Hello everyone, and welcome to a new video where we dive once again into the fantastic world of dinosaurs. And we'll do so to get to know all these specimens. Inside, we have both herbivorous and carnivorous dinosaurs. Also, you already know that I love these figures because we can assemble and disassemble them like a puzzle. Also, that allows us to move the jaw in the case of the carnivores, and also move both their front and back legs. In this case, we have a big Velociraptor. Velociraptors were carnivorous dinosaurs. The figure comes with very striking colors: blue, yellow, and some touches of black. As you know, Velociraptors could reach about 2 meters in length. The most characteristic thing about them was their long tail, which they used to change direction. Also, something very characteristic about them was that one of their claws was curved, like a hook. We can see it here at the bottom. Velociraptors, although they weren't very big, were able to catch large prey because they hunted in groups. And a very interesting fact about them is that, although it doesn't appear this way in the movies, in reality, Velociraptors had feathers all over their bodies, especially on their tails, where the feathers were very thick. Let's leave it here, and we'll continue with a different one. Look, everyone! We have a spectacular dinosaur, especially because of the large crest of spines it has. Its name is Dimetrodon. Just its crest of spines alone could reach more than 2 meters in length. Besides, it was a quadruped, it walked on all fours. As you can see, its body is very similar to the bodies of modern lizards. However, Dimetrodon was gigantic in size. As you can see, its jaw was also quite robust. Its teeth were not very sharp, but they were very thick and very strong. They had an incredible bite. It was impossible to escape from those sharp teeth. As you can see, the figure is also really cool. Also, the crest of spines is made from a softer plastic. That allows us to move it. And it comes with some amazing colors. Dimetrodon also loved to dive into the water in search of marine animals. That is, it could be both in the water and on land. And now we continue with a herbivorous dinosaur. This dinosaur was called Pachycephalosaurus. As you can see, it was characterized by the shape of its head. At the top of its head, it had a skull as hard as a rock. It used it to engage in big battles against other members of its own species, or also to defend itself from predators. Also, on the back, it had large spikes that were very helpful to it. Like other large herbivores, it also had a strong beak, which it used to dig in the ground in search of food. Since it was a type of dinosaur that fed on plants, leaves, grass, and fruit, as well as on roots it found underground. As you can see, it was a bipedal dinosaur that walked on its hind legs. Although sometimes it also used all four to run at high speed, just like Parasaurolophus. Another one over here. Let's see which one is next. And this time, we have a marine reptile. It's completely black, except for its eyes and these silver details. This dinosaur is called Mosasaurus. As you can see, it had a pretty robust body and a rather large head. It comes with very sharp teeth. And as you can see, the jaw is shaped like pincers. It's a finger trap. It was a giant of the oceans. Its skin was very scaly. And regarding its fins, the front ones were slightly larger than the back ones. It didn't have a very long tail. However, with its fins, it could flap them very quickly to be able to swim at great speed. A giant and a super predator of the oceans. We'll leave it here. And let's see what's next. Well, we have another very distinctive dinosaur. It's another type of herbivore. Because of its characteristics, we can say that it's a Therizinosaur. It had a slightly long neck. It was also a feathered dinosaur. Its whole body was covered in feathers. It also had a strong jaw, and this distinctive beak at the tip. However, the most spectacular thing about the Therizinosaur was its large claws. It had rather large front legs and 3 claws, which it used defensively. Although here in this little figure, it barely has any claws. However, you already know that this dinosaur had huge claws, and it would wave them very quickly, from one side to the other, whenever a predator tried to attack it. A truly fascinating dinosaur. Another one over here. Let's see which one is next. Look, over here, we're seeing a really big figure. What do you think about making it? It's a large carnivore. Because of the horns on its head, we already know it's a Carnotaurus. And this figure is too. It's one of those we can assemble and disassemble. However, it comes in a much bigger size. I like it because it can also move its head up and down. Also, since the legs are jointed, we can also put it in different positions. For example, tilted upwards, or also crouched, as if it were eating some kind of animal on the ground. As you can see, the front legs of the Carnotaurus were very small. Small fingers on each of them. Also, its jaw was impressive. A curious fact about Carnotaurus is that even when it closed its jaw, it always left the teeth of the upper jaw exposed. It also had these small horns that are very reminiscent of a bull's horns. Also, the skull of the great Carnotaurus was huge. Therefore, its sides were flattened to lighten its weight. And I have to admit that I really like the colors of this figure too. We'll leave it here. We still have a lot left to discover. This time, we have another great carnivore that lived on planet Earth during the Jurassic period. As you can see, it's characterized by the large crests it had on its head. It's called Therizinosaurus. An interesting fact is that the Therizinosaurus had differently shaped crests, depending on whether they were male or female. It could reach a height of about 2 meters and an approximate length of about 6 meters from the tip of its mouth to the end of its tail. And we still have a bunch of dinosaurs left inside the box. Over here, we have another great carnivore, a giant among giants, that lived on planet Earth during the Cretaceous period. It's the great Spinosaurus. It could reach over 1 meter in length, and it was generally a bipedal dinosaur that walked on its hind legs. Its jaw was impressive because it was quite elongated. It closely resembles the jaw of modern crocodiles, but on a gigantic scale. Also, this dinosaur was also called the sailback dinosaur because it loved to eat marine animals. Therefore, it would dive into the water, and it would reveal its large crest, making it look like a great sailboat. Here's another one. I'm seeing a large flying reptile. Because of the horn on the back of its head, we already know it's a pteranodon. It also had a strong beak. As you can see, it's very long and thin at the tip. Another interesting fact is that it had a pouch underneath. Very similar to that of pelicans. It used it to store food. We can open and close the beak. It had a long wingspan, more than 2 meters in length, and we can also flap its wings, up and down. The body of the pteranodon, just like that of other flying reptiles, was quite thin and slender, which allowed them to reach great heights, and to fly very fast. Another one over here. And this time we have an armored dinosaur. One of its horns just fell off. Let's put it back on. It's a big one. Oops. Now we've got it on properly. It's an Ankylosaurus. As you can see, it was characterized by having super thick and tough skin. It was also covered with a lot of spikes on the top. That made its skin almost unbreakable. It also had a powerful defensive tail swipe, a tail with a ball or club at the tip, which it swung from side to side to defend itself from predators. It had large spikes on its head. Look closely, it's in the detail of its eyes. I thought I saw another Ankylosaurus, but no, this is the only one we have. It also had a strong beak. Look, here we see it colored in gray. Let's see which one is next. This is another herbivore, very famous. It's the great Triceratops. It had 3 large horns on its head, which it used to defend itself very effectively against predators. For example, if a big Tyrannosaurus rex came along, it used these horns to deliver powerful charges. Also, they lived in groups, so they could defend each other. Look, we have another great Triceratops here. But this time, the figure is transparent, which gives it a super cool touch. It also has these colored details, but we can see that the horns are translucent. The Triceratops horns could reach over 1 meter in length. Next dinosaur. We only have a few left, but we couldn't miss this one, a long-necked one. Here we have a great Brachiosaurus, characterized by this long neck, and also by this small bump it had on the top of its head. As you know, it has dimensions. It could reach more than 25 meters in length. Its legs were very robust, since they had to support the weight of this great dinosaur. Also, its jaw was quite small, since it only fed on fruits, leaves, and grass. It had to eat tons of food every day, since it needed to maintain the weight of this huge body. And we have 2 dinosaurs left over here. These are 2 large carnivores. Over here, we have a Velociraptor. We've already seen a specimen before, although this time it comes in different colors. We can put them together, since they lived in groups or packs. That way, they're together and can attack a large dinosaur. And we have one last dinosaur left to see. It's the great Tyrannosaurus Rex. Also, I really like the figure because of its colors. It comes in these golden tones and black on the underside. The Tyrannosaurus was known for having a gigantic jaw with a total of 60 sharp teeth. Also, its tail was very large and robust, and it used it for balance, since its head was gigantic and could reach more than 1.5 meters in length. Ooh. And now, we've finished today's video. Here we have all the dinosaurs we've learned about. As you can see, they're really cool, and the biggest one is the great Carnotaurus. If you enjoyed today's video, you can help me by giving me a super like, a thumbs up, and I invite you to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos. And now, I'll say goodbye to you. See you in the next video with more amazing dinosaurs. Have a fantastic day. Goodbye. Subscribe. Hello everyone, and welcome to a new video, in which we dive once again into the fantastic world of dinosaurs. And we're going to do that by taking a look at all these specimens that we have inside the box. We have both herbivorous dinosaurs and large carnivores. Let's take them all out to learn their names and some of their characteristics. We also see some smaller figures and others that are bigger, like these 2 here. How about we start with the first one? For example, this one here. This is a herbivorous dinosaur. Its name is Parasaurolophus. And, you know, out of all the herbivores, Parasaurolophus is one of my favorites. Especially because it has some very interesting features. Mainly this big horn on the back of its head, which could make sounds. Very similar to those of a trombone. Do you know what it was used for? To communicate with the rest of the herd. For example, when a carnivore came to try to attack them, they made sounds to warn the rest of the group. Also, it was a dinosaur that was able to walk both on its hind legs and on all 4 legs. These little figures are really cool because we can put them together and take them apart as many times as we want. So later, we're going to make some mutant dinosaurs. We'll swap the pieces, so we can create a dinosaur with pieces from carnivores and herbivores. For now, we'll leave the first one here. And what do you think if we take a look at this dinosaur specimen, which is super big? This is the great Styracosaurus. This dinosaur was from the Triceratops family. As you can see, it had a crown-shaped skull and a bunch of horns or spikes that covered the sides of its crown. It also had a strong horn on the top of its nose, which it used for defense. To defend itself from predators that tried to attack it. As you can see, the figure can move its head up and down, and also side to side. Its legs are also articulated. Just like other large herbivores, it also had a strong beak that it used to dig in the ground in search of food. I love the colors. It comes with these silver details. Super cool. Another one over here. Let's see which one is next. Look at this cool dinosaur. This is a Pyroraptor, a feathered dinosaur. That means its whole body was covered in feathers. However, it wasn't a type of bird, therefore it wasn't able to fly. It was a carnivore, and above all, it had long feathers on the back of its head. Legs, and on its long tail, where the feathers were longer and bushier. Also, as you can see, it had a strong jaw with some very sharp teeth. It was also a bipedal dinosaur that walked on its hind legs. And its body was quite slim and thin, which allowed it to run at great speed. Let's see which one is next. Let's see. We have a flying reptile this time. It's a pteranodon. The pteranodon was known for this large crest it had on the back of its head. It also had a strong beak, quite long and very thin at the tip, which it used to catch food. Another characteristic is that, just like pelicans, it had a pouch underneath to store food. In general, it fed mostly on marine animals. Therefore, Pteranodon was always flying overhead. Over rivers, seas, and oceans in search of food. When it saw a fish, it would dive down and try to catch it with its hind legs, where it had strong claws. This little figure also comes with articulated wings in some very striking colors. It had a wingspan of more than 2 meters in length. That is to say, it was a giant of the skies. We'll leave it here to get to know another type of marine reptile. Look how cool! We're seeing a really long neck. Just like on land, for example, we had the great Diplodocus. In the ocean, there were also animals, or marine reptiles, with long necks. That's the case with the Elasmosaurus. As you can see, its neck was much longer than the rest of its body. Its jaw was large. Here we can see it. It had a rather small head. However, its body was very robust, and it had 4 strong flippers. However, its tail was not very large. Thanks to its flippers, it could swim at great speed. We'll leave it here. Let's see which one is next. Let's see. And this time, we have a fictional dinosaur that was created in the movie Jurassic World. The name is Indominus Rex. It was created in a laboratory at Jurassic Park, as you know, using a combination of DNA from other dinosaurs. That made it much more ferocious and intelligent. As you know, it was characterized by the color of its skin, which was a light color, more whitish or leaning toward grayish. It had a large jaw full of sharp teeth. Therefore, this dinosaur, the Indominus Rex, did not exist in reality. It only exists in the movies. Let's continue with another one. And it's about another large carnivore, characterized by this big crest of spines. It's the great Dimetrodon. Also, I really like the figure because of its colors. The crest of spines could reach about 2 meters in length. And here on the little figure, it's made of a soft plastic that lets us bend it from one side to the other. Its jaw was full of teeth. Even though they weren't very sharp, they were very strong. So it was impossible to escape from this powerful bite. He loved to dive into the water, showing off his big crest. But he was also able to come up to the surface and look for food, like large animals or small mammals. We still have dinosaurs left inside the box. What do you think? And this other marine reptile is the great Mosasaurus. As you can see, it had a pretty compact body with a huge head. Also, the figure comes with a jaw shaped like a clamp, so it can catch our fingers or any other object. Its tail wasn't very long, but it had 4 large flippers. The front ones were slightly bigger than the back ones, and it moved them very quickly to be able to swim super fast. It fed on large prey, especially very big marine animals, but it was also able to hunt land animals, or even flying reptiles, like the great Pteranodon. Do you remember I mentioned to you that the Pteranodon mainly fed on fish? Well, when it approached the ocean looking for some kind of small animal, the Mosasaurus was often able to jump super high and catch the great flying reptile with its mouth. This way. It would dive back into the water and eat it. Impressive, right? Let's see which dinosaur comes out next. Look, we have a super big one. And look at this jaw. Snap, snap. Even though it looks like a very terrifying dinosaur, it was actually a herbivorous dinosaur. It was the great Therizinosaurus, known for the strong claws it had on the front of its legs. It used them by swinging them from side to side very quickly to defend itself from predators. Also, as you can see, it had a long tail and was bipedal. It walked on its hind legs. Although in this figure they made it with sharp teeth, in reality, the Therizinosaurus fed on plants, leaves, and grass. It can also move its neck from side to side and from right to left. Another one over here. This time, we also have a big dinosaur, armored. We couldn't leave it out of this video. It's the great Ankylosaurus. The top part of its body was almost indestructible. As you know, it had very thick skin, and it was covered in spikes on the top. It also had large spikes on the sides of its head. That is, its head was also armored. Its tail ended in a large club or ball, which it used defensively when a predator came near. It was also a quadruped, and it was also called the armadillo of the Cretaceous. Over here, we have two other large herbivores. Very small, but also characterized by the shape of their heads. Look, on this side we have the great Therizinosaurus. On this side we have the great Pachycephalosaurus. I almost got the name wrong. As you know, it had a super hard skull, as hard as a rock. It also had large spikes on the back. And do you know what it did? It engaged in great battles, using its strong skull, headbutting other dinosaurs. It also had a strong beak, something characteristic of some herbivores. They used it to dig in the ground, looking for food. That strong beak was also found on the great Triceratops. It also had a super defensive skull, with 3 large horns, and a crown-shaped skull, with small spikes on the sides. The third horn was smaller, but the 2 on top could reach over a meter in length. It was a quadruped, and it also lived on planet Earth during the Cretaceous period. And we have the last dinosaur left from inside the box. It's a small Velociraptor. Although it wasn't very big, it was able to catch large prey because they hunted in groups or packs. As you can see, its jaw was also full of sharp teeth. And here's an interesting fact. Although the Velociraptor is usually depicted with scaly skin, according to experts, the Velociraptor was a feathered dinosaur that had its whole body covered in feathers, especially on its tail, where they were longer and bushier. It also used its tail to change direction when it was running. Its front legs were quite long, and it used them to catch meat and bring it to its mouth. And now, my friends, we've finished today's video. Here we have all the dinosaurs. If you like this video, you can help me by giving me a super like, a thumbs up. And I invite you to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos. And now, I'll say goodbye to you. See you in the next video with more amazing dinosaurs. Goodbye. Have a fantastic day.